I'm going to submit to you that there's one name that we can trace all the way from the beginning of Christian music through its biggest era and even into the present day, and that name is Brown Bannister, one of the great producers in the history of Christian music, and I'm really excited to have a conversation with him today. Before we get to that, make sure to leave me a 5-star review, write something nice about the show, and get ready for another great conversation on 1 Degree of Andy.
Thank you all for coming out. Good night.
I'm Andy Chrisman, and I'm the host of the 1 Degree of Andy podcast. In my nearly 40 years on the road touring in Christian music with the group For Him, I've met a lot of amazing people who have some remarkable stories to tell. From CCM artists to legendary producers and industry executives to comedians, actors, and authors. I've got a Rolodex full of names that you'll recognize, men and women who have made us sing, laugh, and cry through the years. And just like you and me, they've had their faith tested along the way. So join me each and every week for stories of hope, significance, and a walk down memory lane. This is the 1 Degree of Andy podcast. It's so good to sit down with you. I know we've been trying to schedule this for a while, and you've been so gracious to say yes, and then certain elements have popped up, and you have been at the top of my list since I started putting a list together on this podcast, going, who would be my dream list of people to have on? And Brown, I have a tagline for this, and I say it a lot. You can't tell the story of Christian music without ... Brown Bannister fits perfectly at the end of that statement.
Well,
you're nodding your head because you know it's true.
In all humility, I know that that's true.
Yeah.
And I have been honored to be a part of it.
I don't think there's anyone, Brown, that has had the amount of music in the Christian music history that you have. And so I would love to talk about your career, where it all started.
Great.
All the people you've worked with, whatever stories you want to tell today, I think I'm fascinated by personally. And, I made a list. I went down through allmusic.com and made a list of everything you had produced, and I'm just like, I can't keep doing this because
it's so many pages.
It
gets to be more pages on All Music because then it puts all the collections,
right.
And then wherever those songs reappear on
greatest
other
hits collection.
Yeah, that's right.
But I was going to say, my joke was going to be that it would be easier to talk about the people you haven't worked with. That would be quicker.
That's funny.
And and we got to work with you. For Him got to work with you one time.
Yeah, on My Utmost for His Highest.
That's right.
Which was it was inspired by Oswald Chambers, that book. And was it Lauren Ballman that had the idea to do that?
It was.
I believe that word. And I remember that was a really busy time for me.
I remember that.
I was like finishing 6 records at one time, which wasn't normal for me, but then to take on a multi-artist project was like, wow. But I had to do it. It was just such a great idea.
Yeah.
And it was during that time that I, got to work with you guys, got to work with Sandy Patty, with BB, with all these people that I had never gotten to be in the studio with. So it was like such a privilege to do that project. But I was literally, and I played this for you before we started, I was literally listening to You Are Holy.
Yeah.
And at the end of the second chorus going into the bridge, I just got chills listening to it. For 2 reasons. First of all, it's fantastic. Like, y'all's vocals are fantastic.
Oh, kind.
Secondly, it just took me right back to whatever that was, 1990.
It was late 90s.
5 or 6.
Oh, was it that early?
Somewhere in there.
I was thinking maybe 96.
Yeah, it was somewhere
like 97,
mid-90s.
maybe,
Yeah. But it just took me back to that moment and at the dugout, my studio on Music Row. And I can't remember. Do you remember how long did we work on that? Because this is in the days of no vocal tuning.
Nope.
And, no editing.
Nope.
I mean, that was back in the time where the performers had to perform it.
You had to come in ready.
And you had to execute.
Yeah.
Well,
my memory is we came in like after lunch maybe that day because I remember your schedule being so packed, and you might have even played a couple of things you were working on some of those other records for us. But I remember we came in later in the day, and we worked well into the night. It was one of the few examples of, it's one of the few memories I have of working that late into the night. Like a lot of artists did that.
Probably past midnight.
Oh, it was way past midnight.
Yeah, like 2, 3
I think it was 2,
a.m.
3 a.m.
Yeah.
Because everything was under the gun.
Yeah.
And we were probably on tour at the time and just maybe had a day to come in.
You were just, it was like absolutely the only time you could do it.
But in my career, some of the best stuff I ever recorded was really late at night when my voice is trashed and you're just like, you've got the producer saying, can you give me one more?
Yeah.
You got one more gear. And then you hit a little gold mine there. You dig down so deep. You hit that little gold, that little piece of gold, and you go, there it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
It's amazing. To me, of course, I worked probably way too much back then. My wife and I are still together, which I give her credit for that, for putting up with the craziness. But I worked lots of, 14, 16-hour days, back then. And one thing I found is that, first of all, did I remember to feed you all? Did we eat?
Probably.
Because
we would have demanded it, I'm sure.
My wife always says, you're like Pharaoh, everybody else your artists are going, let my people eat, So, but what the other thing I found, and I'll tie this into another kind of philosophical approach to production, is that when artists and musicians kind of reach the end of their rope, all they have to go on is kind of instinct and sort of like gut feelings, and there's you kind of like detach from the editor in your head to just pure instinct and spontaneity.
It's almost primal.
Yeah.
There's that real you that comes out. Roger Breland of Truth would always say this. He would ask the question, what comes out of an orange when you squeeze it? And of course, everybody's going to answer orange juice. And he goes, that's technically incorrect. It's whatever's in the orange comes out.
Oh, wow.
It's the pulp and the seeds and whatever.
Yeah.
So that was something I always thought great producers did.
Yeah.
And I saw that in you. I knew it about you, but then working with you on that one song, I felt that going, you know how to squeeze an artist without crushing them.
Yeah.
But squeeze them to get that. You got to get down deep and get that primal thing out of them that only they can deliver.
Well, many times I totally agree. And that's such a great, I need to use that quote too, in my classes.
I'm just loading you up here with
you
quotes.
Are. Okay, I probably shouldn't say this, but
please do.
Many times I'm working with an artist and they're coming in. They've written these songs for this new record, and basically when they're recording the songs, it's the first time they're like really performing them.
Yeah.
So I historically this is back in the day we rented gear and stuff. I would historically do a mic shootout, and you'd have like 5 or 6, vintage mics, tube mics, cardioid, etc., just various and sundry microphones, and like get them to sing on each mic. And and then I bring them into the control room and go, which one do you like? Which one do you feel is like representing the characteristics of your voice? And then we go to the next level of all the possible outboard gear, like compressors and EQ and limiters, etc. And part of what I was doing there, I can say this now because I don't do this as much now, but part of what I was doing is trying to stretch the beginning part out as long as possible before we actually went for the performance. It was kind of like my idea was like letting the artist take the song on the road.
Yeah.
Because they've sung it so many times.
Sure.
And part of that is getting out of their head and,
It's intimidating.
Well.
It really is intimidating if you've not been in the studio and you're a new artist.
If you're a new artist.
And I don't think, you could have done this for 10, 15 years and it's still, you come in with a new producer, you got to get to know where this is going to go.
Yeah.
And if this is going to work. And so I totally get that. I work with artists and worship pastors across the country, and a lot of them hire me for vocal and performance coaching.
Oh, cool.
And if a lot of them, I just say, look, if you really want me to work with you, like if you want me to push you, it's going to get difficult, and I might come off as mean. I said, but I'm going to work until I get something that makes me feel who you actually are.
That's great.
Because your voice is great. I mean, your voice, if you get to that level, your voice got you there. But I need to feel something.
Yeah.
And when working with you,
Man,
working
that's
with great
so
people like Michael
true.
Amardian and Don Cook, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
Mark Heimerman and Brent Bourgeois and people
Yeah.
like that who they knew how to get that next level out of you.
Yeah.
And that was always exciting to me.
Yeah.
Can I ask you this?
Yeah.
You talk about gear, and I'm not a gear guy, but it did always fascinate me that almost every artist had their mic and had their presets. Did Amy, and Amy's a big part of your story and your history, did Amy have one certain mic that she would use that was great on her voice?
No, honestly, it would kind of, we would switch it up song by song
Okay.
a lot of times, depending on if it's kind of like a big track or if it's a more intimate thing. You just take a different approach technically, But yeah, there wasn't one mic in particular. I do have a friend that Tommy Sims, who produced an album on Michael Amardian, and they did the whole mic shootout thing, and had rented all these mics from Blackbird, rentals, and at the end of the time, Tommy said, "Hey, what do you think? Which one do you like?" He said, "Well, normally, they're great. Normally, I sing on a 57." Michael McDonald. Incredible. So,
Wow.
you can do all the technical stuff, but at the end of the day, it's what's on the other side of the mic
That's right.
that
You're exactly right.
makes the magic happen.
Exactly right. Well, I want to talk about your story.
Okay.
I would love to go back to the beginning.
Okay.
I can't, it blows my mind.
Are you talking about like when I was a twinkle in my
Well, sure,
father's
if you want
eye?
to start there.
Okay.
Like what got you into the business?
Yeah.
How'd you find your way into the Christian music world?
Okay. I don't want to take up I could take up our whole time just telling you that story, so I'll try to be a little more thumbnail.
You
Basically,
tell the story you want to tell.
I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay.
And I grew up in the Church of Christ, which is interesting since it was a non-instrumental church.
How many people in the beginning days of Christian music grew up in the Church of Christ? Abilene Christian.
Yeah. There was a consortium of us that came from the Heimermans, Chris Harris, Mike Blanton, Gary Pigg. There were Chris Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is kind of ironic, I think, that so many of us grew up in a non-instrumental kind of context and then ended up like being really involved in Christian music.
Yeah.
And my church was, I will say, because nobody's there anymore, I will say it was kind of like going to a funeral service more than to a celebration.
Yeah.
And, it was the day in which you could play a hymn or something on a piano at your house, but you couldn't bring it into any instrument into the church. That would be somehow not making a melody in your heart.
Interesting. I've never really understood.
Very, very legalistic. In fact, my mom, when she got married, she grew up Church of Christ in a small town in Southwest Texas, Rock Springs, Texas. And her mom, Mammy, was just awesome, man. And so she asked the elders, because she was a piano teacher, said, "Can I bring the piano into the church and play the wedding march, And they were like, "Absolutely not. Lightning might strike." So she definitely had a twinkle in her eye. So it was a hot June day, and all the windows of the church were open. She had her ranch hands put her spinet piano in the back of a pickup truck and back it up to the church.
That's amazing.
And she went out and played it from outside.
Incredible.
Which is, I love that. It's kind of like when I led worship at Belmont Church on Music Row with Don Finto, and Smitty and Amy and, so many of us went to Belmont. I was just starting to work with Amy, and I said, man, would you like to come, like, play a song or something in church? We'd never had an instrument in church before. And I just didn't think about it because I was already like
Yeah.
working in the studio and working, on Christian music, CCM records. And boy, howdy, you would think, you would think I just asked like the devil to come in and do a song. It was like a huge uproar.
Yeah.
But I think part of the beauty of having been raised Church of Christ and then moved up to Nashville, I just didn't really think about it. It just never occurred to me that it could upset some people, but it did, and now it's really different,
Yeah, it's so commonplace. I think there's probably a expand and contract
Yeah.
thing to the church, to where I think at some point we'll see a contraction of, the big sound and lights and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. People are kind of wanting that, but you can't. I will say, in defense of the Church of Christ, I mean, a lot of great singers.
Yeah.
You learn how to sing the harmonies,
You learn
and
harmony,
the
is
the
awesome.
voice is the first instrument.
Yeah.
And so I think it is. But you're right. It's fascinating that I believe the Christian music industry was born out of the Church of
Kinda
Christ.
came out of that, which
Yeah.
is so ironic.
Yeah.
I think my grandmother just had this hunch about me. She had me take piano lessons. She gave me my first guitar. She sent me to Texas Normal Singing School in Sabinal, Texas, where you learn how to actually be a song
direct.
leader,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
in an a cappella context.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. I don't know what she was thinking. Certainly, music business was not on our radar. When I went to college, I was pre-med for 3.5 years
Oh, wow.
at Abilene Christian
Yeah.
University. And that's where I met Chris Christian, Mike Blanton, and we became big buddies. Mike Blanton dragged me to auditions for, we had this big sing-song thing every year, and they have hosts and hostesses, and I was chosen for that. And then he dragged me to a audition for Hilltop Singers, which is where I met Jan Heimerman now, and Gary Pig and different people, and they were getting ready to do a USO tour, and this is sort of I would say central to my story. At least I feel it is. I auditioned for this Hilltop Singers for this USO tour, and when I went into the director's office to see, well, was I chosen? Was I not? He said, Brown, you're not very good, but everybody really likes you. So I think we'd like for you to be a part of it. You'd be an addition to the community. And I just think that's so interesting because I really wasn't very good. It wasn't like I was this great musician or this fantastic vocalist.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just kind of like, loved being part of the team. So fast forward to Christian graduates. I moved to Nashville while he's up here already.
And why did you move to Nashville?
I moved to Nashville because I had gotten involved in the drug subculture at my Christian university.
Wow.
And just had what I would say like literally the searchlight came on. I was in a room. It was filled with smoke. I was with Mike Blanton's brother. Mike Blanton walks in, my best friend, into the room and does the worst thing he could do. He just stands there, takes it all in. This is my best friend and my brother. He didn't know this was going on, and he just started crying.
Oh, wow.
And left. Well, needless to say, that wrecked me, and I stayed up all night, and when I got in the shower the next morning, it was just like the light came on. It was like, this is why you need a Savior. I mean, I can't even articulate it well, but it was amazing. So what happened is I went home and told my parents I'd like to lay out of school for a semester, and they were like, okay, that's great. They were awesome.
Wow.
I didn't tell them why, but I needed to kind of get a little separation. Sorry, Mom and Dad. I need to get a little separation. And we decided that night I would go to Missoula, Montana. And he was in the elevator business, had its ups and downs.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get the shaft,
Womp
all
womp.
of that, dad jokes. But he knew an elevator guy up in Missoula could give me a job. And he was an elder in a Church of Christ. So it felt like a safe net, a safety net.
Right.
So went to bed that night and said, Lord, I'm so excited. I'm so pumped about this. Now, if you want me to go somewhere else, you might want to talk to my dad because he's really for this idea. Next day he comes home, says, guess who I talked to? Perry Birch from Nashville, Tennessee. And I think you ought to go to Nashville instead of Missoula. So literally, it just overnight switched from Missoula to Nashville.
What was the job opportunity?
Same thing. He had an
Okay.
elevator company.
Okay.
He was an elder at Vultee Church of Christ, very conservative Church of Christ, still is here in Nashville. And I came to Nashville with $300, which was a lot of money at the time. No credit card, no cell phone, no GPS. And finally got here, spent the night, tried to get a hold of Perry, and he kept being out of the office. So I thought, I don't need to pay for another night of hotel. I know, I'll just go find David Lipscomb University, which was a sister university to Abilene Christian, Church of Christ University. And I literally, without a map, I drove for 2.5 hours, just loving Nashville, but thinking I'm just going to run across David Lipscomb. I mean, this is the most ridiculously designed city plan,
Yeah.
It's a wagon wheel, spokes of the wheel going out.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of planning. And 2.5 hours later, I'm coming down Granny White Pike. I drive on to I see David Lipscomb. I drive onto campus, and a guy I'd only met in Abilene was driving off campus. He didn't even go to school there. He was driving off campus, waved me down. We got to talk, and he said, do you need a place to live? Yeah. Do you need a place to work? Yeah. I'm going to this great church, Belmont Church. And that's how I got to Nashville, and that's how I never met Perry Birch.
Yeah.
I never met him. I never went to Vultee Church of Christ. God just bypassed
This is
all of
such
that.
a common story from that era that blows my mind that so many artists, and I have a similar story too of just going and not, Roger Breland of Truth sent me to the wrong town to audition, and I had to make my way from that. It was like, I was like Lewis and Clark, trying to
Isn't that amazing?
find out where I was supposed to go.
Yeah.
That wouldn't happen these days because there's too much information out there.
Yeah.
You can get a hold of everybody.
We have access.
And I think there's a beauty to that of just going, I think I should go. I'm going to go, and I don't know what's out there. I'm going to trust God, and He'll lead me. And, there's an innocence to it, I think, that is lost that I really think is pretty beautiful.
Kind of a purity to it.
Yeah.
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 Well, anyway, I fell in love with Jesus in Nashville, going to Koinonia bookstore, seeing Honey Tree, and who sang He's Alive? Don Francisco.
Don Francisco.
Because there were no venues to play in.
Yeah.
People weren't doing ticketed concerts for Christian music. It was just bookstores and beaches.
So this would have been early
campuses.
70s?
Yeah, 72. So anyway, I just fell in love with the Lord and just loved the church. And so when I went back, my parents said, what do you want to do? I think I want to do ministry. And they said, well, let's take you to this Johnson O'Connor Research. It's an aptitude testing center. It was a 3-day test, and they're still around. But at the end of it, they said, you should be in some area of music composition. And we left there going, that was a total waste of money. Like, what are they talking about?
Had you ever written a song?
No. It was so not on my parents' or my radar. So I went back and just picked a random major in mass communications, I think, and then ended up communicating to the masses. So it was appropriate.
Yeah.
But when I graduated, since I've been in Nashville, Chris was up in Nashville, I had 2 job offers. One was as a youth pastor in Little Rock, and one was a campus ministry in Gainesville, Florida. So random, but it was just through connections and people. And I was interested in ministry. And Chris calls me when I'm trying to make that decision.
Chris Christian.
Chris Christian calls me and says, man, just come to Nashville. I said, well, I have jobs. I don't have a job. He said, I'll get you a job. I'm running the bluegrass show at Opryland. I'll just put you in the band. I said, okay, well, what would I have to do? Well, we need somebody who can play guitar, mandolin, bass, and fiddle. I said, Chris, I only own one of those instruments. Needless to say, I don't know the other three.
Yeah.
He said, that's right. You'll learn it. Simple music. So I came to Nashville and did my best imitation of a fiddle player in that show, where you jump back from the mic so nobody actually heard me and try to smile and look like a fiddler as much as possible. But that led to, he started a jingle company, and ultimately he wanted to be a record producer. So I kind of tagged along with Chris. I sold jingles. I started writing jingles, wrote a putt-putt jingle, and then we wrote the first Chick-fil-A jingle.
Oh, no way.
Anyway, and then he was determined to get a production
Yeah.
deal. He was talking to Word. He said, why don't you go to Belmont College? They had just started engineering coursework and learn how to be an engineer, and you can be my engineer. I'm like, whatever Chris says, I'm going to do, right?
It's just kind of like do the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think that's
I
great.
was in school for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
He said, I got the deal. Come on out. I'm like, we just learned what a tape machine looked like, how to plug it in. He said, that's all right. You can do it. He was just he was just confident in the ability to improvise and learn on the,
He saw something in you. Like
build the plane while you fly.
he must have seen something in you, some sort of, I
don't know. Anyway, so I went out, and my first engineering gig, I'd never touched a console before, was when B.J. Thomas was signed to Word to do his first Faith album, Home Where I Belong.
Yep.
So I'm engineering this. I've never engineered anything. And it's like Larry London, this drummer that played on Motel Hits, Joe Osborne, who played on Bridge Over Troubled Water, and Reggie Young, who wrote the hit lick on Drift Away. I mean, it's this all-star cast. And about 10 minutes into the session, Larry London says, who's the engineer? Chris says, Brown. And he said, yo, Brown, can you put some 10K on the snare drum? It sounds like crap, right? And I'm this little Church of Christ kid. I turn red immediately. I put my head on the console and say, Lord, what is 10K?
Oh, no.
And that was literally my baptism of fire.
Yeah.
Did
you figure it out?
Yeah. So we figured it out. The album was the first gold record in Christian music and won a Grammy. So the first thing I worked on was that. Is that the grace of God?
It's incredible.
Or what?
I just think it's, again, so many people on this podcast, they just go and they do the next thing offered to them.
Mm-hmm.
Wes King was one of those guys I've had on the podcast.
Absolutely.
And gets asked by Amy to come out and play guitar on his tour. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I could, or a Wayne Kirkpatrick. Wayne Kirkpatrick's another one of those stories of just like, okay, you need some, I guess I can play second
you just
guitar
say
on
yes.
tour. Yeah, you just say yes.
You just say yes.
Yeah.
You just never know where it's going to lead.
Yeah.
Then to complete that, sort of how I got into production, so I engineered that record. Amy was in my youth group at church. She played me some songs on a youth retreat. She said, will you help me make a cassette tape for my great-grandmother's 90th birthday? I said, yeah. We made a cassette tape. I play it for Chris, and you probably know the story, but I play it for Chris. He's like, yeah, there's something there. He gets Stan Mosier on the phone. Stan's like, well, it's your production deal. If you want to sign her, sign her. So he signed her, and he hung up with Stan Mosier and literally turned to me and said, would you like to produce this? I said, Chris, I don't know how to produce. He said, you didn't know how to engineer.
Wow.
And we won a Grammy and had a gold record. So he's really, I just give him so much credit for just pushing me off the deep into the deep end and just giving me opportunity. So
well, you're off and running then as a producer.
Yeah.
And never look back.
Absolutely. Never look back.
So when we kind of started with your solo record, where did that fit into this journey?
That was when I was dating my wife, which was 1980.
Okay.
And then I think it came out in 1981, which is when I got married.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I would have been, I was probably a freshman in high school, and I'd just started making money and buying Christian records.
Really?
And yeah, buying. I remember I
That's
bought
what
that.
you chose to do with your
I know.
disposable
Well,
income?
I did. Well, I didn't have a girlfriend, didn't have a car, and anything like that. And I was a musician, and I loved to sing. And I remember hearing.
Did you sing in high school, like
did.
for choir or other things?
Well, growing up in Waco, I grew up in Waco, and I had no idea Word Records was there.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I found that out after I got into Truth and was like, wait,
That's crazy.
Word is in, or I would see it on the back of a record cover too later on going, oh, Word Records,
Waco, Texas. Yeah.
How about that? Had I known, I would have been been a stalker that kind of, waited outside the front
Yeah.
doors for famous people to come through. But, Waco, I didn't have a lot of opportunities really.
Yeah.
I sang at church, my little Southern Baptist church, sang a little bit in high school, but I knew I had a gift. I just didn't know how to.
So
I didn't know where to take it.
When did it click in that? Like, I know you're interviewing me, but I'm curious
No,
to
that's
know.
a great question.
When did it click in for you? Like, oh wait,
Well, I think that my brother was he graduated John Brown University with a lot of our friends, Stevie V, several names that escape me right now, but he was in that whole crew from John Brown that ended up in Nashville.
Oh,
And so he was around a lot of really great musicians. I don't know if you remember, there's a band called Joy Song
yeah,
that Stevie Taylor was a part of, and so many people that ended up in Nashville. And I got introduced to all that music through Jerry, my brother, and then he would bring me up to his church in Siloam Springs, Arkansas, to sing with him when I was 13, 14 years old. And we'd sing like I'm Forgiven by the Imperials or One More Song for You or something like that. And I realized I had a voice that people like responded to.
Yeah.
Like this little teenager that had this big voice that were like, oh, that kid can sing.
Yeah.
And so I kind of knew I had something special, but I had no idea what to do with it. And it wasn't until Roger Breland just came and found me.
How did he find you?
So he tried to hire my brother Jerry to take Steve Green's place in Truth.
Oh,
in like 77, 78, something like that.
Yeah.
And Jerry had already asked his wife to marry him and already had a full-time job and turned it down. So 10 years later, because I'm 10 years behind my brother, 10 years later, Truth is at his church in Oklahoma City, and he says, hey, Mike Eldred is leaving the group, and we need another tenor. Ha, would you like to jump in?
Bingo.
And he went, well, obviously not me, but I have a brother that's the same age
Amazing.
that I was when you asked me 10 years ago. Here's his phone number, and he's pretty good.
Makes total sense that you would fill the Mike Eldred slot.
Yep.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, I was intimidated because he sang some big songs in the group, and he was such a beloved person in the group and just such a great performer. But I had big shoes to fill when I got into Truth.
So then did meeting those guys, did that happen as a result of Truth?
Yes. So Mark Harris was already in the group.
Okay.
And then I came in, and then Kirk followed.
Okay.
No, sorry, Marty followed, and then Kirk came in a few months later. And so we were all together by the summer of '87.
Wow.
And we did 1,000 shows together.
Wow.
Before we ever did a show as for him.
That's crazy.
Now you talk about a training ground.
Yeah. No kidding.
Okay, back to you.
Okay.
Back to you.
All right.
Okay.
That's
so,
interesting.
Amy blows up. I mean, if we're gonna build Mount Rushmore of Christian music, it's going to be Amy and Michael and Stephen and put Toby up there, or
To be more than 4 people.
it would have to be a bunch. Yeah. But
To be a bunch.
Amy definitely was. I remember buying her very first record along with maybe One More Song for You from the Imperials and Leon Patillo, and just putting those headphones on as a teenager and listening to all the sonic goodness and what was going on there. What was that like for you as a producer, now having that success of having a gold record, probably going platinum? it's winning awards. Like, were you like, okay, this is what I want to do with my life? Did you feel like this is where I'm going now?
Honestly, from that first experience of working on BJ's record and sitting in the engineer's chair, I I just fell in love with that creative process. I thought, man, why would I want to do? It's like the apostles saying to Jesus, "Where else would we go? You have the words of life." It's kind of that experience.
Yeah,
of
I get that.
When you,
Yeah.
I'm sure when you got into the studio and actually made your first real record with the guys,
Yeah.
it's just like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And for me, I think this is important. So I really came to know the Lord when I was raised in a great Christian home, but, I got that personal relationship in Nashville and at Belmont, and Papa Don Vinto is our, just such a great mentor and kind of surrogate father. And I don't know, it just, when the whole thing at Koinonia Bookstore, that was the hub in Nashville on Music Row.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yep.
Koinonia Bookstore?
Sure do.
And it was just run by this Jesus freak guy and who lived by faith, and people were getting saved and drug addicts were getting delivered. And it was just such an amazing time. When I got the opportunity to work on the BJ record and we were doing Christian music, it was just the combination of like loving that process and, man, we get to do something that's like going to impact culture and maybe, get somebody saved and teach somebody about Jesus. It was a real, there was just this pure delight that was born in me at that time about what we were doing. Like, the music part was great. The technical part I loved, but getting to do Christian music, it was just, it felt like such a golden, amazing opportunity that for me, and I wasn't really getting paid back then much. Sorry, Chris. And it was like $2.75 an hour or something,
Yeah.
I wasn't getting royalties at the time. It was just, I love the aspect of us getting to do this thing and changing people's lives. In fact, fast forward, we did, so I did 3 records with Amy, a couple of live albums, and then we went to Colorado to do Age to Age.
Oh, wow.
Up at Caribou Studios before it burned down. And that's when the Amy thing really blew up.
Yeah.
I remember Jim Guercio, who produced Chicago and Doobie Brothers and all these people who owned the ranch, this 8,000-acre ranch. He walked in the studio, heard what we were doing. He said, "That's a platinum record, boys," and we were all like, "Yeah, right." And sure enough, it was like, I guess, the first platinum record by a solo artist.
It is one of the cornerstone records in Christian music, and your production style was just so unique and fresh. What do you attribute that to? Like how did you grow as a producer and were able to craft the sound that you were creating for your artists in the studio?
Basically, I didn't know what I was doing really, because I never got to watch, like, I didn't come up under other people.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's how you produce records. So I did see sessions that Chris was doing, and I think just kind of soaking it up. And then really, I always say Amy and I kind of grew up together in it. And you listen to her first record, it's like super simple and kind of stripped back, and she sounds like a little girl, and but we did 21 records together over like 30 years. So I think the fact that we were a team with Blanton Harrell and with Amy, and later Michael W. came into that scene, and we just kind of kept that relationship, which is unusual. That doesn't really happen today. And I think because there was a lot of trust built in to the team, and it was a sense of family too, Amy just always made sure that we were doing things together.
Yeah.
And even when Mike Blanton, saw the grass was greener on the other side and wanted to hire Michael Omardian to produce Amy, Amy's like, "No, I want to keep working with Brown." And I think what we would do is just really absorb whatever was going on in the culture.
Yeah.
like musically.
Well, I was going to say, that's one of the things that always fascinated me about you as a producer was how your sound continued to progress.
Yeah.
Because that is, as an artist, and I've worked with a lot of producers, sometimes you work with producers where you kind of feel like
Kind of hit the wall.
the sound hits a
Yeah.
wall and stalls out, and you're not getting anything new.
Yeah.
And that's what was so fascinating about listening to the records you're working on was like, I mean, I know we're talking about Amy, but I have to talk about this year's model.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had Ron
Yeah.
Hemby on one of the episodes,
That was
and
so
that's
much
pretty much
fun.
all we talked about. And we got to the end of it, I'm like, we didn't even get to, what you're doing now and all the things you've been going through, and but
So
I was
much
just
fun.
that was such an incredible record for me to pick up and listen to in the late '80s.
Mm-hmm.
Those were sounds I'd never heard before, or production techniques that I'd never heard before in Christian music.
Yeah.
So I would love to talk about that record if you would for a moment, but in conjunction with what you're talking about, listening to what's going on around
Listening
you
to
in
the
music.
culture.
Yeah.
And also, I think another big change for me came about my 5th or 6th year into doing this. I was asked to do a record on Debbie Boone,
Oh,
who
yeah.
had just had this like massive worldwide hit,
Yeah.
You Light Up My Life. And she wanted to do a worship album. And so we did this album called With My Song. And I just thought, well, she lives in L.A. Maybe I should go to L.A. Chris wanted me to keep the business at his studio, obviously. But I just thought, I need to do that. And so I just started researching musicians in L.A. and got connected with this protege of Bill Schnee, Jack Joseph Puig.
Yeah.
And so he helped me kind of put the session together, went out there and recorded that album. And basically, I came from the land of studios that were shag carpet, burlap, and, just no vibe, no ambiance, and went out and started working in these amazing studios that all these amazing LA musicians that were making all the pop records. This was Steve Lukather, and it was, I mean, you
Yeah.
name it.
Yeah.
Abe Laboriel, and all these fantastic musicians. And guys like guitar players, as opposed to just bringing in an amp, they would come with a rack of gear, and keyboard players, racks of keyboards. And it just sort of blew the blinders off. And so I started working out there probably too much for my family life, but 3 or 4 months a year I was out in LA working with the best musicians in the world. I mean, we have great musicians in Nashville, and now the playing field is even.
Yeah.
But back then, all the technology and everything that was new
Right. The technology is so
was in
readily
the
available
West.
now.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But not back then. So I think that really exposed me to a lot of new sounds and approaches production-wise and musicianship.
Yeah.
So what I started to doing with all these subsequent records, out of the 20 or so records with Amy, each time we would come around, I would go, okay, like what? I want to keep this person, but what new element do we throw in? Dan Huff, he just
Yep.
was trying to get me to hire him on sessions here in Nashville, and I used him one time and thought, wow, you're my guy. And then he moved to L.A.
Yeah.
and he became the top guitar player in
That's right.
L.A. So like bringing Robbie Buchanan, bringing Paul Lyme, all these other musicians from the West Coast.
Yeah.
I think that it gave new life, new ideas, new creativity to all the records we were doing.
Who was speaking into your style? Because I listened to, because we all did this as artists, and I know producers did too. They would hear something and go, oh, I want to do that. Like, I want to infuse that I just heard into this.
Yeah.
So many producers we would sit with, and I think I remember, I just have a memory of Reed Arvin when we did some music with him, and we played that Annie Lennox album came out that had Walking on Broken Glass and Fly and all that.
Wow, what a
had
great
just
record.
come out, and I mean, he's just like, this is what I want to. This is the kind of music I want to make. So I know we're all affected by people who are doing stuff that we go, if I could bring some of that in and that in. I
Yeah.
remember hearing one of my favorite records of all time is Mr. Mister's Welcome to the Real World.
Yeah.
And I remember as a young musician hearing that going, I'm lost. Like, I love everything on this record, but I'm completely lost on how they got to here,
How
to
do you get
that,
there?
and add
Yeah.
that here. How did you get into that break and into that musical place? It was such a mystery to me. And that's what I felt like when I heard this year's model.
Huh.
I was like, this is fantastic. And I'm going to listen to it 100 times in a row to try and figure everything out. But I don't know. How'd you get from that idea to that idea to that idea? I mean, how do you do that? I don't even know
Okay.
if you can answer the question. I'm just
It's
geeking out
hard.
here on some of these records.
It is hard to ask the question. And this year's model was probably one of the most fun records I'd ever made at
I
that
bet.
time. And I would give a lot of credit to Jimmy Lee Sloas.
Oh, of course.
And he was like this spark plug of that project. And Ron Hemby. Those two
Yeah.
were just, I mean, it was their project. And maybe a little bit to Armin's chagrin. I don't know.
Yeah, he talks about that in his episode for sure.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was so much fun. And Jimmy Lee was really, I mean, he was a huge Hugh Padgham fan, producer in London. You know, worked with Phil Collins and
Yeah.
Aha and different
Oh, wow.
things. He was a big fan of the Fix, like guitar
Oh, I
wise.
love the Fix.
So again, you know, if I had to go in and make a record by myself, you know, as opposed to like all the amazing producers that do this today with all the technology and programming, they play every instrument, you know, well enough to be able to edit it and make it sound great. I just wouldn't make any records. That's just not me. I am an old school producer that has to put together a team and shepherd the team. So I'm more I see myself as more of a shepherd producer than like the guy that has the creative, you know, juices and vision and everything.
Well, that's how Ron described you. He said that you're just always open to all the great ideas.
Yeah.
And then basically put them in puzzle form and saying,
Yeah.
okay, this works
Yeah.
here and that works in that place.
Which is awesome because basically what you were talking about, how some artist producer relationships, you kind of come to we're sort of doing the same record, you know,
Yeah.
kind of juncture. I didn't really have a sound, you know, and
Makes sense to me.
I think I was my sound was listening to the people around me and the
I mean,
team
for
that
crying
I
out
put
loud, you
together.
produced one of the great Whiteheart records of all time.
Oh, I love that record too.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, just the fact that you could go from, you know, Amy Grant to Whiteheart,
Yeah.
and it was such a left turn, but it was still,
Yeah, that was so I did Lead Me On with Amy,
yeah,
which I have a story about that, but
Please.
Lead Me On, and then the next record I did was Whiteheart Freedom. And when we were making Lead Me On, when we were going to do that record, I really I did have a sound in my head that was an ambient kind of sound, and you can hear it in that
Yeah.
record. But there was no studio in Nashville to really do that in. So I went and talked to Norbert Putnam's studio manager who owned the Bennett House.
Right.
And it was this, you know, 1700s, like beautiful antebellum house and had 14-foot ceilings, plaster walls, wood floors. It was just a beautiful, like, house.
and even more than the dugout, your place, I associate you with the Bennett House.
The dugout was my attempt to try to emulate the Bennett House with not much money. But the funny thing about this is the studio was actually in outbuildings behind that house.
Yeah.
And I went to the studio manager and said, "Is there any way we could like use the house instead of the studio?" And he was like, "Well, why do you want to do that?" I said, "Just listen to the house. It's amazing." So he said, "I'll talk to the owner." He got approval. We drilled a 8-inch hole in the control room of the Studio A and ran PVC pipe over to the Bennett House.
Yeah.
And we wired up the whole Bennett House as a studio. And it was just this fantastic kind of glorious. You could mic the drums on one end, and then the dining room, and then the living room. All these subsequent rooms, you could put room mics in, put room mics up the chimney, and you could get all these different cool sounds, right, from just this creative space. So that was like super inspirational to me, and I think when I went to do the Freedom record, I thought we got to use the same place.
Yeah.
You know, we got to be in the Bennett House, and yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I'm kind of getting off the.
I love
off
it.
the
No,
track,
this is the
but-
kind of stuff I love. I mean, I think the audience that listens to this podcast, they want to hear the personal stories, but they also, there's a lot of music geeks like me that are like, I want to know.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I want to know
Yeah.
the details of the recording and stuff.
And when we did Lead Me On, I brought 4 musicians from L.A. and then had Dan Huff, Jerry McPherson,
Oh, man.
and I think Chris McHugh played on one song. So anyway, we just had this great montage of all these great musical minds, and
You know what's great about those guys? Because they played on our records.
Yeah,
But our records didn't sound that, maybe Don Cook and Michael and Martin produced didn't sound like the records you were producing.
no.
But it was the same players for many of
Isn't
them.
that
Chris
interesting?
McHugh and Jerry Mack and just all these people that were, and Dan, that could, in the hands of a different producer,
Yeah,
would come up with something completely different.
isn't that
I
cool?
think that's fascinating.
I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. Can we talk about Lead Me On?
Yeah.
Because again, another huge record in the history of Christian
Wow,
music
yeah.
that just blew up everywhere. It
It's
was
a great record.
the Grammys and hits on secular radio. And was that the first multi-producer
No,
record that she
that
did, or
was
was
the next one.
okay?
So Lead Me On.
Heart and Motion. That's what I was trying
Heart
to
and
say.
Motion,
I was
yeah.
trying to talk about Heart and Motion. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. So we did Lead Me On. I think it's really interesting. This speaks to A&R. There was this A&R guy. So Mike and Dan signed dual record deal with Waco, with Word and Waco, and with A&M Records.
Right.
That's when that marriage happened, or the partnership happened. And so we were kind of thinking we were going to make this, I don't know what kind of record. Anyway, trying to, we're with A&M. We got to have these pop songs and all this. And went out to meet with David Anderley, who actually A&R'd like Joni Mitchell.
Wow.
Like, think about that.
Yeah.
And he's this Jewish guy. And we sit in this meeting, we play all these songs, and he's like, this is good. Didn't say much. And then he kind of leaned over to Amy and kind of pointed at her heart and said, you know what I'd like to hear? I'd like to hear that. I think we need more of that. And basically, we went out with all these songs for the record, came back to Nashville, and she started writing other songs like Lead Me On and all these amazing songs.
It's such a beautiful, it's almost a haunting record.
It's a haunting record.
Yeah.
And she was going through some stuff at the time, and it ended up being like what some media outlets called her dark record, because it was heavier. It was not quite as fluffy or joyful or whatever. But I think it was like a really important record, and I think it's what allowed her to be able to make Heart in Motion.
I think it's my favorite record of hers.
I love it.
Kind of like,
I love it. Yeah.
I think every artist that has had a career like Amy, I think about Coldplay, like Ghost Stories is my favorite record of theirs, which is it's darker.
love Ghost Stories.
It's,
I love that.
it's just
Yeah.
it's brooding, but there's
Yeah.
there's a beauty behind the darkness.
There's a depth.
Yeah.
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 There's story. You can tell there's a lot of story
Well, I
there.
think about If These Walls Could Speak or Talk.
gosh.
What
if these walls could speak.
could speak. Yeah, just
Jimmy Webb.
to end the record with that, and it does. It's a melancholy to it that you look back now and go, well, good, because that's the era of life she was walking through.
That's right.
And
It
to
was
have a
the
producer
season.
that would say, yeah, let's go there.
Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
really
Heart in
fun.
Motion. So Heart in Motion was the first one with multiple producers.
Yes.
But yet it's the one that broke the glass ceiling
Absolutely.
for Christian artists, and
Absolutely.
especially for Amy.
So Mike Blanton tells me, "Hey, look, I think on this one, I know Amy's been fighting for you this whole time. I think on this one we're gonna bring in some other producers." And he told me what he's thinking, Michael Wardian and Keith Thomas, and it kind of like crushed me,
Yeah.
because we've done all these records together. Crushed me and scared me because I mean Amy was so successful, and I was kind of making my living on Amy Grant, and so I really struggled with that concept of bringing in other producers just on a personal level. And my wife, Debbie, really helped walk me through that and ultimately coming to that conversation of, now, who's your source? Who's your source?
Wow.
Is Amy your source? No, of course not. But it helps, Amy helps with being a source, but no, of course not. And I really give credit to Debbie. And so she really helped me come to the point where I just kind of like, okay, let loose your grip, open your hands, and just trust God, basically. And what's interesting is what I thought was a threat. I probably, from an income standpoint, I probably made 4 or 5 times what I ever made on any Amy record, because Keith Thomas was on it.
Yeah.
And wrote, Baby,
Baby,
and
Baby.
Good
Yeah.
for Me. And I don't know, it was just that was a really great crossroads for me, and life lesson on just trusting God.
Yeah.
It was tough battle, but once I kind of got over it, we had a blast,
Yeah.
making that record. And that's also on that record, by the way.
Yeah.
I had just produced a record on Charlie Peacock, like his first Sparrow record.
Yeah.
Called Secret of Time, and just fell in love with Charlie, and just his creativity is just knows no bounds. And so I went to him when we were getting ready to do the record for Amy. I said, "Man, if you have any ideas, I'll be glad to pitch them." And so he pitched a track that Amy and Wayne ended up writing. Wayne Kirkpatrick wrote Every Heartbeat.
Wow.
So Every Heartbeat was the third single on the record, and it went to number 2 on the Hot 100,
Yeah.
and it was behind the Robin Hood theme
Oh,
that
wow.
Bryan Adams, Everything I Do It For You. And that stinking song stayed there for 12 weeks while we were number 2. So I never actually had a number 1 pop record.
Oh, man.
But,
That's so
it sorta
frustrating.
counts.
Yeah. But, you don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
No, you don't. No, I have no complaints.
Yeah, that's incredible. What I was going to say was I wanted to talk about maybe your producer tree, kind of like coaches have a coaching tree, like great coaches in the NFL have assistants that's worked under them, or people that have come into their, into their coaching lanes, and they've gone on to do great things. So you talk about Charlie Peacock,
Yeah.
and then he goes off to have this great career as a producer on his own. Who are some of the other people?
The student becomes the teacher.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the great things about this life that we live is we should be rooting for the people coming up underneath us. We want them to stand on our shoulders.
Absolutely.
We don't want to deny them opportunities that we had. And somebody gave us great opportunities.
Well, I tell you, and I think the important, kind of the central character trait I think you need in fostering other people's talent is, I don't care who gets the credit.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit, and
That's
when
so
you're
good.
willing to share the credit. I remember doing Amy's second Christmas album, Home for Christmas, and Ron Huff, Dan Huff's dad, did the arrange. Who you probably worked with at some point.
Yeah.
Ron Huff did the arrangements, and they were like full symphony, 70-piece, and we're in England recording this record, and he's the arranger, and we started with a full symphony and the Joy to the World, I think, and For Unto Us. It went into For Unto Us, and it's just like we walk in with blank tape, and then he lifts the baton, and that happens. And he came back in. Of course, we're all like crying, emotional, like, "Oh, that was incredible." He said, "Was everything okay?" I said, "There's only one one problem. He said, "What's that?" And I said, you are the arranger, but you need to be producer on this.
Wow.
You need to be co-producer."
Wow.
And so
That's
to
huge.
me, it's huge, but it's important because you're giving credit where credit's due.
Yeah, Brown, I just got to say, I mean, that's a lot of money. You're
Yeah.
shifting away from yourself to somebody else. I mean, that's not just, I think
Absolutely.
you should get the credit, but I think you should share in the success
Absolutely.
of this record. I think that's incredible.
Yeah. So I had a lot of people, that I probably should have shared financially with, the ones that were coming up. But in the 90s, when there were a lot of programmers that were programming tracks, I worked with Pete Kipley. I worked
Yeah.
with Dan Muckala. I worked with Bernie Herms. I
Wow.
worked with, who else? Those are the ones coming. Oh, Ben Shive later on.
Yeah.
Just worked with all these great, talented. They were like these visionaries that just envisioned the track in its fullness, and you're like, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Let's tweak that and use that as the basis for the record. So I did have a lot of young producers that kind of came up under me, and then all of them. I think Pete, went on to do Mercy Me and Phil Wickham, and
You produced a little bit for us, too.
and then Bernie Herms, of course.
Oh, gosh.
Natalie Grant, and et cetera, et cetera. He's amazing. And Dan Muckala, worked with Mercy Me, the Afters, and I don't know. It was so fun to see these people that were kind of like down here, like really giving them a platform. That was a joy to me.
I love that.
So again, it kind of falls under that. Who cares who gets the credit?
Yeah.
Hey, we're in this together.
And that's kind of what you're doing now as
It's totally what I'm
professor.
doing now. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm at Lipscomb University. I'm working in the School of Music, and I was the director of the School of Music, which was really funny because I have an undergraduate degree, but it's like this faculty full of like people with PhDs.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I really fit here, but they needed somebody to take the baton from Charlie Peacock, who got sick. He'd started the commercial program and got sick. So anyway, I led that for 6 or 7 years, and was really exciting because it was kind of like the same thing of putting a session together for a record. It's like getting the right people on the team, hiring the right people to be on the team, and putting people in the right seats on the bus.
Yeah.
It was that whole experience, but in a more organizational kind of from an organizational standpoint. So it was very siloed when I came to Lipscomb. Classical music is good, and it's over here. Commercial music is, and it's over here. And we retooled the vision to be one school of music. All music is good if it's good.
Yeah.
And every discipline can learn from every other discipline. And so we retooled it to be one school. And it is a joy now. We have a fantastic faculty that gets along with each other, and everybody's supportive. And we have this seminar on Mondays, and when I came, there's like 36 students. Now there's 200. And all these students come together, and somebody will play a song they've just written, and it's like, uproarious applause from classical kids, jazz, vocal performance, commercial songwriters, and production. And then some kid will play like Tchaikovsky, and it's the same response.
Wow.
So it's this real, like, everybody loves everything kind of thing,
That's such a great thing to foster.
So it's that's really been exciting because,
That's really great.
commercial, a lot of songwriters come in that picked up a guitar because of Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And they haven't like disciplined themselves, and they're in the same classes as kids who've been studying violin for 12 years, So it's good. The discipline rubs off, the performance kind of shooting from the hip thing rubs off on the classical players.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Has there been a student come up while you've been there that's kind of broken through?
Nobody's broken through, but there's lots of people that have come through that are actually doing it. They're like musicians in bands, like with Chris Renzema or Drew and Ellie Holcomb. 2 of our first graduates are working with them, and they formed a band called Small Time, and they're getting to perform a song in the middle of Drew Holcomb's set, and Dave's Highway, they're making records. So there are people that are kind of bubbling under. Nobody's been like huge. Unfortunately, before I got there and before there was a commercial program, both Kelsey Ballerini and Thomas Rhett graduated from Lipscomb, which was like, oh man, it would have been great to have that story.
Whoa, we could have gotten a hold of them.
Yeah. So
incredible.
No breakthrough yet, but it's a 10-year town.
Yeah.
To be an artist.
Incredible.
And it takes a while.
People don't think about that when they get into when they want to come in and be an artist. They're not ready for the long game.
Oh my goodness, it's such a long game.
And with social media now, everything's like, I better be a success within the first 10 minutes, or
I need something to
nothing.
go viral.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What would you have to say to that, to anybody that's listening to this that is considering either becoming an artist or maybe sending their kids to Nashville, or supporting someone in their family that's on their way here to maybe try and realize that dream?
Well, I had a friend of mine come in and talk the first year I was teaching, a guy named Gordon Kennedy.
Yeah.
And who, he's just a fantastic guitar player and played with Garth and different people. He's amazing. He was in White Heart. But he said, the music business is kind of like you come in and you pick up your bow and arrow and you pull it back with all your might, and there's this target across the room on the wall, and as much as you can, you try to hit that target, and you release the arrow, and it lands over there on that wall. And he said, what you do in the music business is you go to that wall and draw a target around where the arrow landed. And it's that whole idea of being willing to pivot, to say yes to many things, to be open to opportunities. So I always tell parents, like, if you want to come to college and study pharmacy, it's like this straight line. You go through, you get your pharmacy degree, and then you cross the street to Walgreens or CVS. If you want to be in the arts, it's like this squiggly path.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
You're right.
And you never end up where you think you're going to end up. Rarely does somebody end up doing what they think they're going to be
You and I would
doing.
never have guessed.
No way.
We'd be where we are today,
No way.
or that we would be able to look back and
What'd you major in college?
math and engineering.
See?
Yeah.
My point exactly.
Yep.
Now, we have a lot of people in the School of Music that are engineering students or medical students. They seem to have a great brain for music. It's something about the math element.
What is music? But it's lyric and meter.
Yeah, that's right.
There's something about it that is mathematical in my head.
So anybody who's listening, that's all there is to it. Just learn lyric and meter and you got it. But I think we always say, look, you need to sign up, especially if you're doing the artist thing or want to become a successful songwriter or producer. You're going to have multiple streams of income.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So you need to be a good barista. You need to be able to, if you're a producer, maybe play on people's records. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're in a band, tour for a while. As a songwriter, you can just think of multiple things that you can do with creative talent, and just sign up for a 10-year journey to know what it's really going to look like. You got to be willing to do that. If you're not willing to do that, Ron Fair, who was this great producer from LA, said, if you want to be an artist, it's got to be like oxygen to you. You have to do it. You have to have it to live. It's like that's how much you got to want it. So I think just identifying desire, identifying passion. Of course, you have to have a baseline of talent, and then you have to have the discipline to get better than your peers at your craft. And you have to have the patience and perseverance to stick with it. So I think all of those things are things that I say all the time to students that are prospective, music majors.
Well, I got to tell you, it's been a thrill. I know I've taken a lot of your time here today, but it's been it's so fun and so easy just to sit and talk shop. And again, just be able to pay my respects to you as someone who I'm just so glad we got one song together,
Yeah.
If we never got anything, we got that one song, and it was a good one. So
it was great.
Listeners, go back and listen to that whole utmost for my
Project,
highest.
but you're
my
holy.
utmost for his highest.
I
Yeah,
love You're Holy.
You're Holy was very
Yeah.
special. We did it in concert a lot, so I'm
awesome.
better for having worked with you, and
That's awesome.
you know I appreciate the massive role that you've played in my life, from being a teenager, picking up that first Amy Grant record, to all the way through my career, and just be able to listen back to your catalog, and it's just an honor to call you a friend.
Thank you.
And I'm just so honored you'd be here with me today.
Back at you.
I could have talked to Brown for hours about the albums that he's been a part of, and I was geeking out for sure about his production process. And, you know, he's just one of the best people I've ever met in my journeys through Christian music. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me today on 1 Degree of Andy. I'll be back next week with another fantastic guest. Until then, make sure to leave me a 5-star review, write something nice about the show, and I'll see you next week right here on 1 Degree of Andy.